What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. It's currently on Netflix, and it has audio description done by International Digital Center, written by Dakota Green, and narrated by Thomas Reed. That was a nice surprise. I actually did a panel once. Thomas Reed interviewed me, so he's a pretty cool guy. And I was like, who's doing this narration? This sounds really good. I was like, it's Thomas Reed. Cool. You know what's cool about that is it's appropriate for the content of the film. Something we don't get a lot of in narration is the thoughtfulness in the casting. So props to International Digital Center on that. And to Dakota Green for writing an excellent audio description track for this film. Is it any good? Aside from the fact that is the weirdest title. I don't see the critics addressing this enough. That is the weirdest title for a fourth sequel. Axel F. F? Anyway. So, yeah. It's, I gotta say, it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. There's a sense of dread when Netflix announces a film now. When they're like, oh, we got this. It's like, no, you don't. Step away from the film. I don't know who touched this that made it better, but this is better than their usual sort of like output of like wannabe blockbusters, you know, like The Gray Man and Red Notice. Every once in a while there's a film on Netflix that I like, but it's not necessarily also one that feels like, oh, we really put a lot of effort into this. But they have a couple of those films every year, and they're like, we went out and we got ourselves a big cast and a big director and a big budget, and we made this film, and we're proud of it. And it's like, it sucks. It really is just a terrible movie. But that's not this. This is actually genuinely good. I think I'm one of those weird people that like the second movie, but it's better than the third movie. The third movie for me was weird, and admittedly, this is better than that. So, basically, I would watch 1, 2, and 4 again. You know, I would just skip 3. 3 is so weird. It's like, why are we at a theme park? What's going on here? What are we doing? Unfortunately, we did bring back Bronson Pinchot from the third movie. I don't know why. I don't know why he's here. I don't know why we needed to revive this character, but he is in this film, along with returning Beverly Hills Cop OGs, Judge Reinhold and John Ashton are both in this. And Paul Reiser was in this. He somehow got promoted to chief back in Detroit above Eddie Murphy. Didn't feel like that was the trajectory for his character in the other movies when he's, you know, it kind of felt like he was under Axel, so kudos to him for, I guess, towing the line and getting that promotion. But I guess I had to find a reason to bring back Paul Reiser, and what role would that be? Well, he needs a chief in Detroit. And who was in Detroit? Paul Reiser. Paul Reiser was in Detroit. We have some new cast members here. Taylor Page, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Kevin Bacon. And we're going to talk about each one of those because specifically they either bring something to the film or take something away from the film and keep it from being perfect. We do have some problems. I'm not going to tell you it's the best thing you've ever seen in your entire life. That would be a lie. Actually, this film has sort of like one big glaring problem that it just kind of like walks right into and just admits to it and just leaves. It just wears it. It just wears it with pride. It's like walking into dog shit and just walking around with it on you. Just being like, yeah, what do you got? You got a problem with it? That's mine. I'm wearing it. It's there. It's okay. Well, if you're cool with it, then I guess we have to be cool with it. I'm so confused. That's kind of how I felt like with one big thing in this film. So what this film is we start off with Eddie Murphy, obviously as Axel back in Detroit, and he has to always, we always touch base with him on some sort of Detroit case that he's solving. So he's got this case that he's got to do a little like intro, sort of like, let's bust these guys. It's a fun sequence, and it gets us to Paul Reiser, who gets to yell at Axel like he always gets yelled at by some police chief. And then Paul Reiser's like, "I'm retiring, man. I just want to hang out with my grandchildren, or whatever." And Axel's like, "You're too young. We can't. You get what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Why don't you retire?" And he's like, "Because you know, I'm still here. I'm still doing this." So there's a hint of here that like maybe Eddie, if he could get it, would do a 5, because his character is really resistant to retirement. And Eddie doesn't really have a whole lot going on right now, cinematically. So if this is a big thing for Netflix, I would not be surprised at all if they're like, "By the way, we're going to make another one." Because that feels totally on brand for Netflix, although they haven't followed through on a lot of their sequel plans before. Like, we still haven't gotten that sequel to The Old Guard with Charlize Theron that they promised, like 4 years ago. Like, how long does it take you to make that sequel? I don't think it took you that long to make that movie. But so what ends up happening is we also see out in Los Angeles, we see a young Black woman who, for some reason, doesn't have the last name of Foley. That's so weird. Why are we tracking her? This is a very odd situation that we're just not introduced to. And she's a lawyer, and she's checking out this guy in jail who she's gotten a hot tip that he's innocent. So she's sitting down with him, and he's telling her the story. And when she comes out, basically, some group of masked individuals try to kill her. And in a fairly cool set piece, I'm not going to lie. That was interesting. It didn't make any sense, but screw it. It was a cool thing. It sounded cool. It was like, I don't buy this for a second. I did question later on. I was like, how is she driving? What, did she get a new car? I had questions about that, definitely. But it was cool set piece at the time. Later on, she's driving a car, and I just conceptually, I was just like, what the fuck? So lawyer, then we catch her, and lo and behold, we get a nice old friend played by Judge Reinhold. Is Billy's coming up, and he's talking to her, and he's like, "Oh, your dad would be so upset." And she's like, "You can't tell him." Of course he does. So that's when we find out that the girl is Axel's daughter. And when Axel's daughter is messed with, oh shit. That dude hops on a plane, and he's in Los Angeles, like, immediately. Beverly Hills. He's like, "What? Where am I? Where's my daughter? What am I doing? Who am I punching?" But the problem is that Billy has promised to pick him up at the airport and doesn't do it, because we see Billy in another sequence, and then we're worried about Billy's safety because Billy's gotten too close. So he can't find Billy, who he's worried about, because Billy would have picked him up at the airport, and his daughter's obviously involved in something. So he goes to his, goes through the whole thing and ends up in this massive chase sequence. It's super cool. Then we find out that John Ashton's Taggart is also the chief of Beverly Hills Police now, and he's back. He's unretired, and he's back in the seat, ready to yell at Axel, but also give him a big hug. And lo and behold, this is where we're gonna cut off the plot development for a minute, because I need to talk about some of the new characters, because along the way, so I've already mentioned the fact that Axel has a daughter played by Taylor Page. Taylor was excellent in Zola. Definitely a rising star. This will be a nice boost for her in terms of films on resume. I don't think a lot of people are familiar with who Taylor Page is, but she is really good in this role. And what's excellent about her casting is that originally, when they were going to reboot Beverly Hills Cop for a CBS franchise, they were going to bring in Brandon T. Jackson, who would have always seemed like he was trying to be Eddie Murphy, because that's exactly Brandon T. Jackson's style of humor. That's why he also played Martin Lawrence's son in Big Mama's House. So I'm glad we dodged that, because going with somebody who's like the polar opposite, but then you get those couple little moments where you get to see how unintentionally she's like Axel, because she's basically sworn him off. He was a sort of an absent father. He says it was because, to keep them safe. And he had to, too many threats were on his life and on his family's life. So he sent them away and divorced his mother and never saw his kids. That's his defense. Her defense is, fuck you. So, yeah, it's, she's a nice, strong personality, seems smart, and doesn't have combat skills, but she has her wits, so that's good. And we didn't need another combat skill person, but she's also not a damsel in distress. Like, she's not constantly getting kidnapped, which would be really annoying. If like every 5 seconds you turn around, you're like, God, is she kidnapped again? Like, that would drive the film insane. So she's nice, and it also opens up to a character called Bobby, which is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, who is the character that arrests Axel. And he's sitting across, and he's very much a cop for the new age. Right away, Axel's trying to do his stuff, and Bob is like, this isn't gonna work on me. I know you're trying to like emasculate me and thinking you're gonna get me flustered, and it's not gonna happen. And it really doesn't. It doesn't happen. He's a lot more confident in where he is and what he is. Smart kid. You never get a bad guy vibe from him, like he's involved. He does say that the case that this whole thing was his case that he's working on, so there's a hint of maybe you could, but it would have been one hell of a right hook. Always feels like this guy is supposed to be on Axel's side, and then you find out later on it's, oh yeah, he used to date Axel's daughter. So, yeah, he gets kind of roped in on finding out the action along with, so he becomes, because Judge Reinhold and John Ashton are elderly at this point, they don't do much. I'm just going to be honest to the fans of Beverly Hills Cop. They don't do much here. I don't know how much physical activity Eddie Murphy had to do to get himself going for this, but he does a lot. And he actually kind of puts, because Judge is not that much different in terms of age. John Ashton is, like, I forgive John Ashton. They gave him a chief role and he can just sit at a desk and yell at people. Great. Perfect. Judge is 67. He's not that much older than Eddie Murphy, and easily could have been in shape for this. It just spends most of the movie somewhere. So, yeah. And then, other than Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who I thought was a nice addition to the cast, I love that they got somebody of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's level, too, for that role. So it actually feels like people wanted to be in this movie. We have Kevin Bacon. Now we're going to talk a little bit about spoilers here. I apologize, but to be totally honest, when I'm going to tell you exactly how this happens, and you'll realize it's not really a spoiler, that the film, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying the film just owns its shit. So, first of all, when you cast somebody like Kevin Bacon in a film like this, you have to go out of your way to establish who he is, because he'll either be a cameo, or he'll be a villain, or he has to be Axel's new partner. Now, since they got the latter of that covered by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, essentially, he's either a cameo, or he's the bad guy. Axel's first meeting with this guy, he immediately leaves the room and calls him out, and he's like, that's the guy. He said, nobody wears $2,000 Gucci's. He immediately points out he's the bad guy. That guy's on the take. Like, he calls it out on the spot. Kevin Bacon's in the room, and he's like, bam. Like, they've just met. And Axel just labels him immediately. And then the movie just, from that point, never shakes it. And never tries to convince you that he's not. It never goes the other direction. Every other interaction he ever has with him is always just brazenly like, yeah, I'm the bad guy. What are you going to do about it? Like, I mean, the thing is that he's so high up in the police, and he controls so many people that he's basically untouchable. So he can, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying they wear it, is because he basically can't touch him. He'll just call the police on you, or he'll plant cocaine in your trunk, or whatever he needs to do. But he's the ultimate crooked cop. And yeah. So there's no mystery here as to like, who's the bad guy? I don't know. Who's behind all this? I don't know. There's a little bit of a hint. He tries to hint at other people. Like I said, they bring up the thing that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was working on the case, which they're, it's obviously was a bad case, and somebody got framed. And he even throws it at Taggart. He's like, are you behind this? Because Taggart is trying to stand up. He doesn't see the Kevin Bacon thing at all. Like, he just way over his head. Even though Billy tried to warn him, and now Axel's like, dude, do you not see it? And Taggart's like, he was my boot. I trained him. I'm like, okay, maybe they'll go that route. I don't think they're going to. I think they're just going to play him off as an old guy who's a dumbass. But you'll find out when you watch the movie. So yeah, it's got big set pieces. It felt like it had a budget. It felt like people actually shot this thing. I don't know. It feels like home in many ways too, because instead of updating the franchise for a new generation, it feels like an actual extension, even more so than the third film did, where the third film we got kind of lost in 90s. We got kind of lost in the weird sort of like, I don't know what was happening. Like, I want to say like psychosexual thriller movies that we had that sort of changed the game, where Basic Instinct, and we had Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct, and those kind of movies. And somehow that affected Beverly Hills Cop, even though they're not the same film. But it does feel different as a movie than the second film, and Eddie Murphy felt like he had less energy in the third film than he did in the first two. He actually has relatively the same energy here in this film, that at least the third film, if not more energy than the third film. He does his usual fast talking thing where he walks into rooms and just talks until he convinces you that he is who he says he is, and just by endlessly talking. He does that, and he does it really well. It's like, this is the role Eddie Murphy was born to play, and he's just going to play it again. I really thought this was going to be bad because Netflix wanted it, and this should have been going somewhere else, and it's good enough to go somewhere else. The only glaring thing I can think of, and I don't even know how to feel about it, because I feel like the film is, like I said, it feels like it's owning its shit. It feels like it's literally wearing it and walking around in it. Is it basically has this huge actor, Kevin Bacon, in this film. As soon as you're introduced to him, you're like, oh shit. And as soon as Eddie Murphy has the ability to vocalize it, he vocalizes it and says, that's the villain. And then you're like, okay, well, mystery solved. So then the whole film becomes about how do you get a guy with, that high up, with that level of power? How do you connect? Jane, the daughter, has this client who's in jail that is there who did not kill the person who he's convicted of killing. It was all set up, and it was set up from this guy. So like, they're trying to unravel, and they have to unravel it in the right way. They can't just walk up to Kevin Bacon, punch him in the face, and be like, you're the bad guy. Done. Solved. Case over. So it's interesting to see how they maneuver with a villain that's just brazenly just like, yup, what you can do about it? Okay. I love the soundtrack. It's not updated. which is excellent. It is 80s. It's 80s music, and I love it. I think the most recent music that I heard was Mary J. Blige from the 90s. And it has, yeah, it keeps that original vibe of the soundtrack. They didn't hire a whole bunch of like newer artists to come in. As much as I love like the Lady Gaga song in Top Gun Maverick, it does sound completely different than the original film. Like the score and the soundtrack to Top Gun Maverick sounds way different than the first film. Here they managed to sort of like maintain the integrity of the first couple movies when they were in the 80s with that sort of like pulsating 80s soundtrack, and they just kind of brought it back. And it would feel out of place if you've never seen a Beverly Hills Cop movie. You'd be like, why does this soundtrack sound so old? But if you've seen a Beverly Hills Cop movie before, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is totally on brand. So there might be some haters out there, but they're probably people who haven't seen a Beverly Hills Cop movie before. And even those people, it's like, this is a really hard film to hate. It's fairly well done. We're not throwing Oscars at it. This is not Top Gun Maverick. Eddie Murphy's not going to get in the Oscar conversation. We're not going to be like, I don't know, is this a legacy sequel that gets it? No, it's not. It's not. There's not a single scene in here that would qualify anybody for any sort of Oscar nomination. But it's fun, and that should be good enough. And it's well cast. I didn't hate anybody. Like I said, the biggest question that I have is how much does that really ruin the film with the Kevin Bacon thing about just straight up, and not veering away from that. There's, that kind of does factor into my grade a little bit. And the fact that, yes, while it is an entertaining sequel, I don't know that it's a sequel that we needed. It does remind us that he's old. There are a couple times where he's like, I'm just too tired. Like there's one time where he starts to do the fast talking thing. He's like, listen, I'm just too tired. I'm just gonna be straight with you. He just tries that for once. And everybody around him is retiring. So I don't even, like, this is 4, and they pulled it off. I don't know what 5 would look like. I don't know if everybody would come back for 5. I don't know if Paul Reiser and John Ashton would come back for 5, because the way that their characters are set up are both sort of like, we're old, edge of retirement, So, we'll see. But this was a lot better. When I heard that they were doing this, I was just like, oh my God. No, please. No, not Netflix. No, it's going to be like every other week of the movie release. It's just not going to be good. But the film is entertaining. It has excellent audio description. Thomas Reed is fantastic. Just a great casting choice. Dakota Green did, again, another fantastic script for all these there are some big action set pieces. I'm trying not to have too many spoilers. I did the Kevin Bacon thing. That was it. That's not even a spoiler. Because like I said, as soon as Eddie Murphy sees him, he's like, you're the bad guy. It's just like, it's immediately like, nobody wears Gucci shoes. It's like, okay. Yeah. I'm going to give, I think I went to bed and then woke up and thought I was going to give this movie a different grade than this, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. Like, I'm feeling like I was pretty well entertained. Does the film drag a little bit? Sure. Like, there's a sequence where they go to this house, but I have to tell you that if we lost that sequence, like, I could cut that sequence, but then I would cut this hilarious realtor who is like, I don't know. I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but she is an absolute standout in the cast. They go to this house where they have to pretend, and they're pretending to be like wealthy. Bronson Pinchot hooks them up and gets them in, and they're pretending to be in this mansion thing. And I'm not even conceptually sure why they're there anymore, but they're there. And there's a real estate agent that's taking them around. That real estate agent was hilarious. I'm sure we could have cut that scene and streamlined the plot more, but I would miss that real estate agent. So she said some of the craziest things. My favorite line in the film is like when she's like, yeah, my kid's a loser. He's 4, but you can tell. I just, it's just like, I was like, I don't know who this person is. The great delivery on these lines. She has so many lines like that. It's the most entertaining thing. She's the most entertaining and funny part other than Eddie Murphy. Like, second funniest character in the series. And there has to be something said for thank you for casting Taylor Page, because you had so many options. This could have gone to Tiffany Haddish. This could have gone to, you could have tried to find somebody who was trying to be Eddie Murphy for an entire movie, but instead you just went with a normal fucking actress who's great. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's a great casting choice, because anybody else would have been not Eddie Murphy and would have just felt like they were Eddie Murphy. Like, if Eddie Murphy had spent this whole movie with Tiffany Haddish, it would be exhausting. It would be absolutely exhausting. But instead, he gets to be himself with a normal daughter who's a lawyer, and believable as a lawyer too. So there's a lot of things here that I didn't give it enough credit for. Maybe a little bit of pacing, and then the Kevin Bacon thing is like, is that a little too obvious? I don't know. But I enjoyed this. I'm gonna give Beverly Hills Cop Axel F an A-. Yeah, I think it's as good as the second one, at least. It's better than the third one, certainly. If you didn't catch my, I reviewed the past original 3 films, and I think I went A-, and B something, like B- or something for Beverly Hills Cop 3. So, to me, there's a big difference between the first 2 and 3. For other people, there's a big difference between 1 and then 2 and 3. So, but I enjoyed 2, and I enjoy this. So I'm weird, I guess. I'll be over in the corner, in the weird corner. I'm seeing some other people who are liking this, so I don't feel alone. We'll see what the general critic consensus is on this, though. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.